kill Austin. Ashley, I really didn't. I really think I did that. I didn't mean to hurt him.
I agree with the family. I hope you die in prison as well.
Before you hear another word, I need you to answer something honestly. Drop it in the comments right now. No thinking, just gut reaction. When a teenager commits murder, are they a monster who deserves life in prison? Or are they still a child whose brain hasn't fully developed? Comment your answer below, because what you're about to see will test everything you believe about justice, age, and accountability. And if you're watching from outside the United States, I especially want to hear from you. How does your country handle teenage killers? Drop your location in the comments. Now, imagine you're sitting in a courtroom. The air is thick with grief. On one side, a family destroyed by violence. On the other, another family about to watch their child disappear behind bars forever. The judge is speaking. The sentence is life without parole. And then, chaos, screaming, bodies hitting the floor, court officers swarming. This isn't a movie. This is real. And the person at the center of it all? An 18-year-old who just hours earlier was smiling and laughing, making obscene gestures at the family of the person he murdered. His name was Shondell Jackson. And what happened in that Milwaukee courtroom would be captured on video, shared millions of times, and spark a conversation that still rages today. But here's what most people don't know. Shondell Jackson isn't unique. He's part of a disturbing pattern of teenage killers whose reactions to life sentences reveal something deeply unsettling about youth, violence, and remorse. Or the complete lack of it. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button now, because we go deep into cases that most channels won't touch. We don't sensationalize, we don't exploit, we examine, we question, we remember the victims, and we try to understand how someone so young can do something so evil. Stick with me to the end of this video, because the final case will leave you speechless. A 16-year-old who cried and begged for forgiveness in court, who seemed genuinely remorseful, until a recorded phone call revealed the truth. But we'll get there. First, Milwaukee. First, Shondell Jackson. October 5th, 2012. Nathan Potter, a university student in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, was walking home from a bar. It was late, he was alone, and he was being followed. Shondell Jackson, 18 years old, and his friend, Derek Thomas, had been out that night actively looking for victims. Not targets of opportunity. Victims. They wanted to rob someone, and Nathan Potter seemed like an easy mark. They approached him as he neared his apartment. The demand was simple. Give us your money. But Nathan didn't have cash on him, and for Shondell Jackson, that wasn't acceptable. So he pulled out a gun and shot Nathan Potter in the chest. Nathan died right there on the street. No warning, no second chance, just gone. Jackson fled to Mississippi, believing distance would save him. But his uncle, a man with a conscience, turned him in. Jackson was arrested, brought back to Milwaukee, and charged with first-degree intentional homicide. And here's where the story takes a turn that most people don't see coming. Because when Jackson appeared in court, he didn't look scared, he didn't look remorseful, he looked amused. During court proceedings, he was caught gesturing at Nathan Potter's family, cursing at them, smirking. When he was escorted out of the courtroom on one occasion, cameras captured him smiling directly at the family members who had just finished weeping on the witness stand. Now pause for a second. Drop a comment. Have you ever seen someone act like this in court? What goes through a person's mind to behave that way? I genuinely want to know what you think, because it gets worse. On the day of sentencing, Jackson's mother took the stand. She told the court that she first heard about the murder on television and that she cried imagining what Nathan's mother must be going through. She insisted her son was not a monster. And then Nathan's father stood up. His victim impact statement was heartbreaking. He said there was nothing that could bring Nathan back, but that the sentence could at least ensure Shondell Jackson would never have the opportunity to inflict this kind of pain again. Jackson was given a chance to speak, and he did apologize. He said he was sorry for his behavior. He begged the judge not to take his life from him. His attorney argued that Jackson's youth and lack of impulse control should be considered, but Judge Dallett wasn't swayed. She announced the sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. And that's when the courtroom exploded. Jackson began screaming. Court officers rushed him. His family members erupted. One of them screamed directly at Nathan Potter's family, "I hate you! I hate you!" It took several officers to restrain Jackson as he fought and yelled. The chaos lasted several minutes. Metal chairs scraped, voices overlapped, and in the middle of it all, Nathan Potter's family sat silently, tears streaming down their faces, watching the boy who killed their son lose his mind. Now, if you think that's the most shocking courtroom reaction you'll ever see, stay with me, because we're about to meet a teenage killer who wore the word killer on his shirt to his sentencing hearing and told the family of his victims that their dead son's memory now turns him on. Yes, you heard that correctly. And no, I'm not exaggerating. If that doesn't make you want to keep watching, I don't know what will. Comment below if you think you can handle what's coming next. And if you're still not subscribed, do it now. Trust me. February 27th, 2012, Chardon High School in Ohio. It was a normal morning. Students were gathered in the cafeteria before classes started. Conversations, laughter, the mundane rhythm of teenage life. And then gunfire. TJ Lane, 17 years old, walked into that cafeteria with a gun and opened fire. When the smoke cleared, 3 students were dead. 3 others were seriously injured. TJ Lane fled the scene, but was captured shortly after. And in the months that followed, as the case moved toward trial, people wondered who this kid was. What could drive someone so young to commit such a senseless act of violence? And the answer, it turned out, was nothing. No clear motive, no bullying backstory, no dramatic manifesto. Just a teenager who decided to kill and did. But what Lane did in court would cement his place as one of the most disturbing young killers in American history. On the day of his sentencing, TJ Lane walked into the courtroom wearing a blue button-shon shirt. Nothing unusual. He sat quietly as the proceedings began, but then, without warning, he stood up and unbuttoned his shirt. Underneath was a white t-shirt, and written across it in bold letters was the word killer, the same shirt he had worn on the day of the shooting. The courtroom gasped. The prosecutor pointed it out to Judge David Furry, and TJ Lane smiled. Not a nervous smile, not an apologetic smile, a proud smile. But Lane wasn't done. As the families of his victims prepared to give their impact statements, Lane sat there, smirking. One by one, parents stood and spoke about their children, about the kindness, the love, the futures that would never be. And TJ Lane laughed. He smiled. He made faces. One father, his voice breaking, asked Lane directly, "Why would you want to hurt him? He was kind and loving." And Lane stared back, emotionless. And then came the moment that would be replayed on news channels around the world. Lane was given the opportunity to make a statement before sentencing, and he did. He looked directly at the families and said, "The hand that pulled the trigger that killed your sons now masturbates to the memory. I love you." The courtroom erupted. Families screamed. The judge's face turned red with fury. TJ Lane was given 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. And as he was led out of the courtroom, he raised his middle finger to everyone in the room. Comment below. What would you do if you were in that courtroom? If that was your child he murdered and he said that to you? How do you even process that level of cruelty? Because I'll be honest with you, I've covered hundreds of cases, and this one still gets to me. Now, TJ Lane's behavior was so extreme, so psychopathic, that it's easy to write him off as an outlier, a 1 in a million monster. But the uncomfortable truth is that he's not alone. Not every teenage killer reacts to their sentences with violence or mockery. Some cry, some beg, some seem genuinely destroyed by what they've done. And that's what makes this next case so haunting. Because when you see a 14-year-old boy sobbing as he's sentenced to life in prison, your heart breaks a little, even when you know what he did. September 2012, Sheboygan Falls, Wisconsin. 78-year-old Barbara Olson was at home when her great-grandson, Antonio Barbeau, and his friend, Nathan Pape, also 14, showed up. Barbara trusted Antonio. He was family, but on this day, Antonio wasn't there for a visit. He was there to kill her, and he brought a hatchet. According to police interviews that would later be made public, Antonio struck Barbara with the hatchet multiple times. As she fell, he hit her again. Meanwhile, Nathan Pape used a hammer to bludgeon her. The attack was brutal, prolonged, and deliberate. Barbara Olson died in her own home, at the hands of 2 children. And when it was over, the boys didn't panic, they didn't run, they went to a convenience store, bought cleaning supplies, and then stopped.
If you're still here, thank you. Seriously. What we're about to discuss is heavy, and I don't take lightly that you're choosing to spend your time engaging with these stories. So do me a favor, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do it now. We're building a community of people who believe these stories matter, who believe the victims deserve to be remembered, and who aren't afraid to ask hard questions. Okay, let's continue. October 21st, 2009, St. Martin's, Missouri. 9-year-old Elizabeth Olden was playing outside when she asked her neighbor, 15-year-old Alyssa Bustamante, if she could come over. Elizabeth looked up to Alyssa. She thought of her as a cool older kid. Alyssa said yes. Elizabeth walked the short distance to Alyssa's house, and she was never seen alive again. When Elizabeth didn't come home, her parents panicked. They called the police and filed a missing persons report. For 2 days, search parties combed the area. Police stopped every car that passed by, asking drivers if they had seen a little girl with blonde hair and a bright smile. Volunteers walked through fields and forests. Elizabeth's face was on every news channel. And the entire time, Alyssa Bustamante watched. She joined the search efforts. She hugged Elizabeth's mother. She cried with the community. And she said nothing. On the 3rd day, police tracked Elizabeth's phone. The signal pinged to the woods behind Alyssa Bustamante's house. Officers went there and discovered a shallow grave. Inside was Elizabeth Olden's body. She had been strangled and stabbed. And just like that, Alyssa Bustamante went from concerned neighbor to prime suspect. During interrogation, Alyssa confessed. She admitted that she had lured Elizabeth into the woods, strangled her, cut her throat, and stabbed her. When detectives asked why, Alyssa's answer was chilling. She said she wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. That was it. No rage, no revenge, just curiosity. But the most disturbing piece of evidence came from Alyssa's bedroom. Detectives found a diary. At first glance, many of the pages appeared blank. But when they used a blue light, invisible ink was revealed. And what they found was an entry written by Alyssa on the night of the murder. In it, she described the experience of killing Elizabeth. She wrote about the rush, the excitement, the euphoria. She said it was an amazing and pretty enjoyable experience. Those were her words. Amazing, enjoyable. Comment below. How does a 15-year-old write something like that? What kind of mind thinks that way? Because this isn't a case of a crime of passion or a moment of rage. This was premeditated, calculated, and documented. Alyssa Bustamante was tried as an adult and faced a potential death penalty. But she accepted a plea deal and was charged with second-degree murder instead of first-degree. The deal was made to avoid the absolute certainty of life without parole. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of conditional release, plus an additional consecutive 30 years. When the sentence was read, Alyssa showed no emotion, no tears, no reaction. She simply stood there, blank-faced, as if she were hearing someone else's fate. Alyssa Bustamante's family gave victim impact statements. They talked about a little girl who loved to laugh, who loved animals, who had her whole life ahead of her. And Alyssa Bustamante stood there and listened. If she felt anything, she didn't show it. Some people believe she's a psychopath. Others think she was a deeply troubled kid who snapped. But here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. Comment below. Does it matter? Does understanding why someone did something change what they deserve? Let me know. Now, we need to talk about something that happens more often than people realize. Teenage killers who show remorse in court, who cry, who beg for forgiveness, and who sometimes are lying. Because one of the most insidious things a young person can do is weaponize their age and appearance to manipulate a jury. And that brings us to a case that starts with a murder and ends with a recorded phone call that exposes everything. But first, let's go to Florida. February 21st, 2011. Officer David Crawford, a 46-year-old police officer in St. Petersburg, responded to a call about a suspicious person near Tropicana Field late at night. Officer Crawford had been on the force for years. He was experienced, careful, but on this night, something went wrong. He exited his vehicle to approach the individual, and at 10:37 p.m., another officer nearby heard gunshots. Officer Crawford was found the next morning, shot and killed. A massive manhunt was launched. Law enforcement agencies across the state were on high alert. And the following night, 16-year-old Nicholas Lindsay was arrested after tips from the community led police to him. During interrogation, Lindsay gave multiple conflicting accounts of what happened. At first, he denied being there. Then he admitted he was there, but said he didn't do it. And finally, he confessed. He said the gun's safety was on, but it wasn't, and it went off. But ballistic evidence told a different story. Officer Crawford had been shot multiple times. This wasn't an accident. This was an execution. From the confession tapes, you might think Nicholas Lindsay felt bad about what he did. His voice cracked. He seemed upset. But when he got to court, everything changed. During the trial, Lindsay appeared uninterested, bored even. He stared off into space. He yawned. And when Officer Crawford's daughter, Amanda, gave her victim impact statement describing the last text message she sent to her father, "Be safe, Dad, I love you," to which he replied, "I will, sweetheart, I love you too," Nicholas Lindsay laughed. He actually laughed. The judge noted that there were significant doubts about Lindsay's potential for rehabilitation. On March 23, 2012, Nicholas Lindsay was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He showed no reaction, no tears, no anger, just a blank stare as he was led away. Comment below if you've made it this far. Seriously, drop an emoji, a word, anything, because we're almost to the final case and I need to know you're still with me. The last story is about a 16-year-old boy who cried in court, who apologized, who seemed to truly regret what he had done, until a recorded phone call revealed it was all an act. Are you ready? March 19th, 2013, Springville, New York. Dylan Schomaker, 16 years old, was dating a young woman who had a 23-month-old son named Austin. On this particular day, Dylan was left alone to babysit Austin, and Austin wouldn't stop crying. Maybe he was hungry, maybe he was tired, maybe he was scared. We'll never know. But what we do know is that Dylan snapped. According to court records and testimony, Dylan hit Austin multiple times. He backhanded him across the face, he slammed the toddler's head against the ground while changing his diaper, and then he placed Austin on a bed, put a pillow over his face, and repeatedly punched him in the head. The medical examiner later testified that Austin suffered ruptured blood vessels, retinal hemorrhages, and severe brain trauma. Austin Smith died shortly after. He was not even 2 years old. When Dylan Schomaker got to court, he did something that many defendants don't do. He expressed remorse. He cried. He addressed Austin's mother, Ashley Smith, and apologized. He said, "I didn't mean to kill Austin. I really didn't. I didn't mean to hurt him." He told the court he wished he could give his own life for Austin. He sobbed as he spoke. And for a moment, some people in that courtroom felt sympathy for him, because he looked like a broken kid who made a terrible, terrible mistake. But then State Supreme Court Justice Michael Waller spoke, and he didn't buy it. Justice Waller told Dylan that at 16 years old, he knew right from wrong. He knew not to keep pounding his fists on a pillow with a baby's head underneath. And then Justice Waller revealed something that changed everything. He said the record would show that on July 23, 2013, while Dylan was in the holding center awaiting trial, he made a phone call to his mother. And in that phone call, Dylan said, "I'm a 16-year-old blonde. Probably all I have to do is cry in front of the jury and they're going to feel sorry for me." Let that sink in. Dylan Schomaker knew exactly what he was doing. The tears were calculated, the apology was strategic, the remorse was fake. He thought he could manipulate the system because of his age and appearance, and he almost did. But that recorded phone call exposed the truth. Dylan Schomaker was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, and as the sentence was read, he continued to cry. But now, everyone in that room knew those tears meant nothing. So here's my final question for you, and I really want you to think about it before you answer. Comment below. When you look at all these cases, Shondell Jackson, TJ Lane, Antonio Barbeau, Alyssa Bustamante, Nicholas Lindsay, and Dylan Schomaker, what do you see? Do you see kids whose brains weren't fully developed, who made terrible choices they'll regret forever? Or do you see killers who deserve every year of their sentences? There's no right answer, but your answer says a lot about how you view justice.